So, hello and welcome back to another episode of Real Talk with Jordan Szafranek. We've been lucky enough to be joined today by Michael Plessis, South African national team member and 3 times African Continental champion. So, first off, thank you for taking the time out to come and do this.
Thanks for inviting me, man. Very honored.
Perfect. So, first off, let's just talk about everything that's been going on within the world, like the pandemic. What's the pandemic situation like in South Africa and where you currently are right now?
Yeah, so initially it was very tough, muchly like in your region of the world where there was a hard lockdown.
Yeah.
But some people managed to keep training in their homes, muchly like people around you. But as of the last around about 6 months, dojos have been operational and we've been able to do things. And this year we had national championships as well.
Wow, amazing.
So that's pretty cool. But the athletes don't look the same, to be honest, as what they did before the pandemic.
Yeah.
And also we've had some adjustments to the rules. So for instance, in Kumite, there's no face contact allowed, even for seniors.
Wow.
In South Africa. It's a little bit of a strange rule.
Yeah.
And the referees are a little bit confused by it, and sometimes it creates some different results as well.
Yeah.
Kata with a mask on is also not fun.
Yeah, no, it's not ideal at all.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
How has it affected your training at all? Because obviously, like for me personally, we've been out of the dojo since March last year, and we've not been I've been lucky enough because the Olympic qualifiers coming up, we've been put into almost an athlete bubble, and we've been allowed back to train in that sense. Have you been able to keep maintaining training the full time during the lockdown or during the
pandemic? So during the initial part of the lockdown, it was pretty good. We had an online source. I developed an online source that we were training together as a group when we weren't able to connect, which was pretty cool and kept the morale up, and that was very nice. But I think the majority of the work was actually geared towards fitness and actually staying healthy in the initial part of the pandemic. But at the moment, I'm actually lucky to be living at my dojo.
Amazing.
My situation is a little bit different, but also the way that I'm training now is very different to before Corona hitting. Because, before I was very focused on results and that type of thing, but now I very muchly train for just the love of karate and exploring and what's going on. And I need it for my mental peace and just to be a whole human being, man. It's got nothing to do with results anymore.
Yeah, because for me, towards the end of almost 2019 going to 2020, training was quite monotonous. It was quite, you go from training to competition, and you've probably felt it yourself. When you do that so often, you kind of fall out of love with it. You're just so focused on the results and the training aspect of it. So for me, this whole lockdown, it's kind of made me fall in love with the sport again. It's made me realize what's actually important. It's not just the results, it's the being able to surround yourself with the people, being able to just train freely and enjoy training and competing again.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. I totally agree. It makes you wonder, as athletes, actually our responsibility is to control an uncontrollable factor.
Exactly.
And that's the result that we get in competition, because sometimes I've experienced this really when I was competing, is that I feel like I had a really bad day. I didn't perform the way that I wanted to, but the result was really good.
Yeah.
And especially the problem with kata is that there's no really objective measure with, okay, what do you want me to look like, man? What do you want me to look like?
Exactly.
And with the point system, I think they didn't do enough of a job of standardizing what exactly constitutes average. They're saying 7 is average, that's what we know. And everything above 7 is good and everything below 7 is bad. But what constitutes average? What does that mean?
Exactly. Do you think that almost comes down to they've not standardized katas, so difficulty of katas almost, because in diving and gymnastics, for example, you've got this move or this routine, like you get a value of that. So like at least you know if you're performing that kata, you're going to have like a start value of that, and like you can kind of build on it, or you can kind of gauge where you should be in a sense.
Yeah, I really think that's a gap. So I think very easy questions that we can ask cannot be answered currently, right? So for instance, let's say Mawashiuke, right? Let's say there isn't a standard way of doing Mawashiuke. You know, Shitori people do it different to Shotokan people do it different to Goju people. What the standard is inside those styles also, we can't agree.
Yeah.
By the way. But let's say you choose a kata with one Mawashiuke or two, right? You take Kurumfa. And then you take Super Impo, which has like 11, right? So if my Mawashiuke has a mistake in it, do I get penalized times 11 for Super Impo and times 3 for Kurumfa, or just one time for the technique?
Exactly. It's one of those things like the rules haven't really evolved that much. Like kata's always, it's just such a subjective. It's like one referee may be like, oh, he's made that mistake once, that's 1 point off, whereas another referee is like, he's made that 11 times, that's 11 points off. And so
exactly.
There's no, as you say, standard way of being able to measure it. And as athletes ourselves, if we are trying to improve for these referees, how do we actually know what they're wanting when it's just all on their opinion at the end of the day?
Yeah, there's not enough feedback at all. Yeah.
So going back to like lockdown, for example, like how's motivation been for you? Because obviously we don't have any competitions like yours or that like coming up, or like they're very limited. How have you been able to like stay motivated like throughout the lockdown period?
Yeah, like I said, I think the motivation completely changed to me as to why I was training.
Yeah,
and that's the reason why the motivation managed to keep up. It's because I needed it for who I am, rather than trying to prepare for a competition. I don't think I'm training as hard as what I did when I was training in preparation for like trying to compete in the Olympics. But you know, it's there and thereabouts, and it's consistent. That's the most important thing.
Exactly.
So I think you have to fall in love with the art again in order to stay motivated to keep going. If you don't, then yeah, man, you have to question whether you were a real athlete in the first place.
Exactly. And do you almost feel, because of say kata, it's like you say you pick 5 katas and you perfect them for so long. Do you think doing that for just a constant period of time, like that kind of makes you fall out of love with it, because you're doing like the same process over and over and over again for like these results, whereas you may not actually be enjoying it?
Absolutely, yeah. So that's actually, yeah, I'm glad you touched on that. So that's something that I explored a lot at the beginning of lockdown. Is I made an effort into exploring more into Shotokan style kata, into Shorin-ryu style kata, going back to the roots, understanding what was the difference between maybe Gichin Funakoshi's version of Gion and his son's version, you know, and why each person did it that way. You know, for me, that's like real karate, you know. Definitely. To make something look flashy is a little bit closer to gymnastics for me.
Exactly. And obviously, the more karate's been put on like a bigger scale the full time, like throughout the ages, it's almost been like more of a spectacle. Like you see in team kata, like people are winning because they've almost done more flips or they've done more tricks, whereas you should almost just go back to the basics and who is technically better, like in the actual process itself, instead of who's got the highest jump, who's got this, that. Which is
I think also the prerequisite, because essentially the people who are selecting our champions are the referees, of course, right? And I think the problem is the prerequisite to becoming a referee. Because I don't necessarily need to know anything about karate to become a WKF referee.
Exactly.
All I have to do is I have to write an exam, which, by the way, the answers are in the back of the book. You know?
Yeah.
So the thing is, this is a really bad check. You know, we're not saying that the referees don't know what they're talking about, but the system to check whether they know or not is not a good one.
Yeah. I know in Scotland, for example, the referees, I'm not trying to say it's bad on their part, but they're not the most developed, shall we say. They've not been to like world championships, international competitions, so they don't know how an actual kata should look. They're only basing it off what they see in their club or within the country, which may not actually be right. Do you ever experience that, like in South Africa, like competitions where referees are not as advanced as what you'd expect your ability to be?
Yeah, I mean, there's a major contrast between the ability of the athletes and the knowledge of the referees. Major contrast. So for a referee to know a kata that's outside of their style is huge. And it's like the baseline for a normal competitor.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, no, we have some developed referees in South Africa. For instance, we have one person who's on the WKF commission.
Amazing.
Yeah, which is great for us. But the filtration of the knowledge doesn't happen that well.
Right.
So you'll find at a national event, it's not what it's supposed to be.
That's what I was going to like lead on and ask. Does your like referees almost help you in a way? So they've go to like world championships, or like the person that's on the WKF commission, do they tell you what referees are actually looking for to aid in your training? Because I know in Scotland that's something where they're almost lacking. Like we need to kind of guess what the referees are wanting based off our performance, instead of a referee in Scotland telling us the way it should look, so we don't have going to a competition and we're almost second guessing if that's what the referee's wanting.
Yeah, I in terms of referees' feedback, when I go to an international competition, I think I've received twice. And I've been to many international competitions, and it usually happens like the day before the competition.
Mm-hmm.
Which, as you know, for kata, this is too late.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we'll probably touch on it later on, but most of the people I've spoken to, it's like you can't make a quick fix in kata, especially. Like, you need to train that months on end. You need to home in on the actual physical preparation. There's like, if you go into a competition, try to overthink like a change that you've made last night, it's just going to completely throw off your performance. You're going to slip, you're going to lose your balance, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. One example is when I was out in Japan, we trained with the Japanese team that was at Serbia, competing in the World Championship. So in the final, when they were on the warm-up, they changed one of the techniques an hour before they were meant to go on, and one of the people mistimed it, and that ultimately cost them the gold at that championship. So changing something so late is going to have such a negative effect on the athletes, and you're not going to get the best out of them in that respect. It's not the best way, especially for kata when it's so subjective. You've put in so many hours to home in on that one performance, and then someone comes and changes it. You're like,
yeah, that's very true. And the other thing is that there's not necessarily unity of valuation of the kata between referees. So this referee can say something, and that referee can say something else.
Exactly. I've experienced that so much just within Scotland alone, like where I've been competing, and then like afterwards, like someone's queried the result, and one referee's like, it should be done like this, then one's like, it should be done like that, and you're like, how is that meant to help me as an athlete? Because what one am I meant to go off?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, I can reveal to you a scary statistic. So the last two Africa Championships that I competed in, one was Botswana in 2019, and one was Morocco 2020. Both times in the semi-final, South African referees directly contributed to me not going to the final.
Okay.
Yeah. So in Morocco, the South African gave me the lowest score out of the whole panel.
Yeah.
And in Botswana, I think second lowest out of the whole panel.
Was that because they were trying to be more critical because they didn't want to seem as though they were giving away bias, or
I don't know.
It's a strange one.
I have no idea. I don't know if it's you don't believe that the person who lives in your country can be that good.
Yeah. See, this is where, and touching on that, like when we go to a continental championship in Europe, no matter if it's like Scotland up, for example, any Scottish referees get taken straight off the tatami. So like you kind of have that bias or just that element taken away from you. So like it's like a fair process almost.
Even with the point system?
Yes, even with the point system, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But touching on, like you say, like referees within your own nation, I actually feel more pressure competing at national championships than I do at Worlds or Europeans, because I'm expected to win, and I know the likelihood is high of me winning. Not to seem overconfident or that, but I don't have faith in the referee system there for them to actually make those right decisions, because they don't have the knowledge or the background or the experience. It's a very nerve-wracking process. Do you ever feel like that at your nationals?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, I feel absolutely free when I step out of South African borders in terms of competition.
Yep.
So I used to compete for a province called Gauteng. Okay. So South Africa split up into 9 provinces. So in 2014, I won junior African championships in 2013 and senior in 2014. At that point in time, I had never won a provincial championship.
Wow.
Yeah. So I perfectly understand exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. Amazing.
And somehow the selectors just had faith in me, and they said, okay, we're gonna send Michael, even though he didn't win locally, but it can easily sway the other way.
Yeah, exactly, definitely. So obviously touching on like that, when did you actually start karate? Like what age? Like how long have you been participating in it for?
I started training when I was 6.
6.
But I started competing only when I was 15.
Right, okay. Was that like competing as in that was your first competition, or that was like wow. So were you just solely focused on the training for the full time?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I was a very traditionally minded guy when I was growing up. I was one of those people who used to hit the tree at home, condition my shins and stuff and whatever. I was really focused on getting my black belt, and then I said, okay, once I get my shodan, let me give this competition thing a try.
Yeah.
And I did really well without much preparation or focus. And I was like, okay, let's give it a try.
Amazing. So what was like your journey into karate? What first got you into it?
Well, basically they just had it at my school.
Right.
And my parents worked really long hours, so they weren't available to fetch me straight after school. So I had to pick some extramurals. So I picked karate.
Amazing.
But I really liked it even from a young age. And then I had a seminar with Sensei Chinen. Maybe you know Sensei Chinen. He's the chief of Jundokan. It's like a subsection. Crazy guy. He lost his pinky toe from giving somebody a maigiri and not pulling up his toes. I don't want to see the other guy. But anyway, so yeah, I had a seminar with him when I was like an orange belt, and that like really sparked my journey.
Yeah, amazing. So obviously you started out as quite traditional. What made you want to make that switch? Because obviously many people would have been happy to just continue along the traditional route if that's where their love was. What was like the switch for you almost?
Yeah, I think my sensei was really pushing me to start competition because he saw that I had potential to do well in competition, but I was not really interested in it. So I gave way to pressure eventually, and also like I was a little bit curious about what is this thing, because many people in my dojo were competing,
Right.
and they seemed like they really enjoyed it, and you know, the traveling and whatever. So I was like, okay, let's try it out. Let's see what it's all about.
Do you remember your first competition?
Yeah, I do. It was an inter-school type competition.
Okay. That was kind of like it was like we had like a club association competition where it's like all the associations within our club just came together. And it was just kind of like pretty much like that, like inter schools, like just a lot of clubs coming together. Yeah. How did you fare in that first competition?
Yeah, I mean, it felt strange. And looking back on the videos, I was like 100% a traditional person. I was not concentrating at all on how anything looked. You know, I was just focused on hitting really hard.
Yeah.
So it felt strange, but it also kind of felt normal, to be honest, to tell me, because I wasn't thinking about the results or the spectators, because it was all very foreign to me. I was just like trying to do my stuff as if it was a grading.
Yeah.
That was the kind of feeling I was going for.
So what was your like first like almost competition where you felt like I was doing well at, where like you made the switch from to traditional to like competition style karate? Was that ever a switch, or it was kind of like a gradual process for you?
So I think in 2011 there were two competitions back to back that made me feel like I could do really well.
Yeah.
The first one was our region competition in Southern Africa,
okay,
where I came second, and like there was no other South Africans like remotely in the same position as me, and there were some pretty strong competitors in my division as well. And then I went to Commonwealth, and I came fifth that time.
Right.
But we had like 6 rounds, so it was many rounds that we had to do, and I lost in the second round. So it was like a huge comeback curve to go from the second round and then go all the way to the bronze medal match.
Yeah.
So I got like a lot of confidence, and I was like, wow, man, like if I can come back from a loss so strongly,
amazing.
Yeah, then I can probably do something.
Do you think like each competition that you've entered, it's kind of like built your confidence each time? Because I know for me, like say like from an association competition, winning that, I then went on to like win the nationals, then our like British championships, and then it was like a snowball effect almost, like you gained confidence every single competition you went to. Was your like process quite similar?
No, not really. No, and the reason why I'm saying that is because majority of the time, like I said, I was losing locally.
Yeah.
And we, as South Africans, we don't really have much international mat time. I think mostly because of where we're situated. You know,
exactly.
It's such a long flight to anywhere.
Yeah.
And so the selectors gave me a chance at the Africa Championship, and that was basically like my first major breakthrough, where I had a chance to do something. Amazing. And then I won. So it wasn't a snowball effect at all, because like 1 month before that, I'd lost in South Africa.
Yeah.
And then I won in Africa.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a big jump.
Yeah. How did you almost deal with losing in South Africa? Like obviously, as athletes, like having to lose, then go like another competition or going back to training. How do you deal with that?
Yeah. So I mean, up until very recently, I really used to struggle, to be honest. Like I remember after certain losses, like where I can't sleep for like 3 days.
Wow.
Sometimes I don't eat for like the next 3-4 days, almost go into complete depression. Yeah. So yeah, I know this is like the direction where I go to after a really heavy loss.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you have to realize that you have to measure your effort and how well you controlled your controllable factors during the day, and then you mark yourself on that.
Yeah.
So if you manage to like have a good time on the floor, which we often forget to do, I think especially kata competitors.
Yes.
If you have a good time on the floor, then you had a good time, even if it's only 3 minutes, you know, which is like a long kata, maybe 2 minutes. So yeah.
Yeah. So like obviously, are you able to take like the positives from those competitions and implement that into your training, or is it something difficult for you to do? Like once you get back to training again, like do you find it difficult to take those positives out of like a loss or anything like that?
Yeah, no, I'm super bad at that.
Yeah.
I'm super bad at that.
But
I often I never see the positives in my performance if I didn't get the result that I wanted.
exactly.
But I use training as a kind of a therapy.
Yeah.
So I'm not the type of person who like loses and then like you won't see me in the dojo for the next 4 days.
Yeah.
That'll happen if I win, you know. Then I'll say, okay, I earned a little bit of a rest.
Yeah.
If I lose, then it's like, okay, I'm straight in the dojo as soon as possible, and I'll have like a 6-hour training session because I need to like get all this bad energy out of the body.
Yeah.
You know?
So are you able to almost like go from one competition and not focus on the result of the previous one, or do you find that difficult, like to dwell on past competitions or results?
No, I definitely dwell on past competitions and results. It's probably not a good thing to do.
Yeah, but at the same time, what all athletes like especially when it's major competitions like a continental one or a world championships, like you've put in however many months of preparation of hard work. So like if you don't get the result that you wanted, then of course it's going to be difficult, like to take like for like the 2018 Worlds, for example, like that was like one of the toughest results I had to take because physically, mentally, like technically, like my performance was there and I didn't get the result I wanted. And like it was almost one of those things like it threw me into doubting did I actually want to do the sport anymore because we put in so much hard work, so much effort, and to not get the results that we want, like it's a difficult thing to take, which from an outside perspective of people that don't do the sport, it's difficult for people to actually comprehend like that we actually need to just forget about it, move on, get back into training, get back into the next competition because we don't really have a season as athletes. Like we have like a competition in January, for example, then we can have a competition in December and all the ones in between. Like we don't really have a time to sit down, de-stress, take a break from it. Like we're always going from one thing to the other, to the other, to the other, which it can be difficult at times.
Yeah, it's super tough, man. Like there's a lot of sports out there that they understand rest seasons, they understand periodization very well, and whatever. Like, so I mean, you know, if you watch somebody like Jesse, you know, Jesse Income, then he speaks a little bit about periodization and the scientific models behind training and whatever. But actually, we're very, very amateur compared to other sports.
Definitely.
You know, and that's a lot because the calendar looks the way that it does. When I was preparing for Olympics and I was going to every Olympic qualifier competition, the general consensus when I was speaking to athletes was, man, I'm really tired. I don't know if I'm going to keep doing this. I don't know how I'm here, you know?
Exactly.
And that's not right. That's not good for anyone. It's not good for WKF. It's not good for us. It's not good for anyone.
Because in that respect, you're not going to get the best out of your athletes. So obviously all these events are televised. You're not going to get the best performance or the best viewing spectacle out of that sense, or you're not going to get the best performance out of each individual athlete because you're going to a competition for 4 days, then you're going to travel however long, then you need to be in a hotel, then you need to go and compete again. And it's like a back and forth cycle because I think it was before the pandemic, there was like maybe 4 or 5 actual Premier Leagues in a row or like Series A's, and there's so many athletes going to all of them, and it's difficult to like keep that intensity up the full time.
Yeah, it's super tough, man. It's super tough.
Especially as being like what we do, it's like an individual sport almost. We don't have a team like for football, example, or rugby, where if you have like an average performance, your team can still carry you through almost. Whereas what we do, what we perform, that's going to reflect the result no matter how someone else does.
Yeah, from an emotional and psychological point of view, it's so tough. Like I don't know how it works for you guys in Scotland, but the amount of times that I've been to a Premier League, maybe just me or me and my coach, just the two of us, and you go onto the tatami and you lose first round and there's no video because the coach was sitting in the chair and you're on the tatami.
Exactly.
And you flew like, okay, in my case, like I fly, if I go to Europe or if I go to the Americas or if I go to Asia, we're talking more than 20 hours of flying, you know, for 3 minutes on the tatami. It's crazy.
That touching on that, the only time I've like really experienced that is the time I've been to Chile, and like the twice I've been, like it was not a nice experience of, as you say, 20 hours on a flight, going all the way down there for 3 minutes on the tatami. So for you be able to having to do that like so many times just in 1 year alone, because most of the Premier Leagues are in Europe or Asia or that, like they're rarely in Africa, like alone. So like it's respect to you for being able to get back every time and just hitting you and keep going in that respect. Yeah.
Thanks, man. Thanks so much. Yeah, we'll see how much longer that lasts, because unfortunately I don't know how it works in Scotland, but in South Africa our we're not sponsored at all.
Yeah, it's the exact same for us. Like you've got a governing body who's they're good in terms of like athletes development or that, but in terms of support, like since I went to the 2011 Worlds in Malaysia and like we had to pay for like all our flights, all our entry fees, everything, and that's been the same thing for the last 10 years. I've had to pay for all my flights, all my training, all my entry fees, and like the governing body hasn't supported like the journey and anything like that. Is it like a similar situation for yourself?
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%, and also a little bit worse because we have coaches that travel with us, the president that travels with us, sometimes a team manager always travels with us, and all of those people's accommodation and tickets are subsidized by the team.
I think they don't tell us this, but I think the price that we pay, I feel like that is subsidized by us as well. Just like I was going to Austria, for example, for the Worlds in Linz, and I paid £1,800 for a week in Austria when it usually only costs £200 to go to Austria for like a competition. So it's like
£1,800 from Scotland is mad.
Exactly. That's probably something like in the regions that you'd pay coming from South Africa. Never mind. It's like maybe a 3-hour flight for us. Yeah, it's crazy.
That's crazy.
Do you have like any support from your government or like national body?
No, we don't. So the only competition that we can get paid for is Africa Games.
Okay, right.
But that's because it's part of the Olympic federation.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the only one.
Yeah.
But African Games is actually a strange animal because it existed way before any of the other games. We were competing in Africa Games was competing. We were competing as karate people in games way before Europe, way before Pan America, everybody.
Wow.
But the system for qualification is not the same.
Okay.
So you guys I think you take 8, right?
Yeah, we take 8. So it's all the from 5th place onwards at the European Championships, they all go plus 2 wild cards.
Okay. So for us, African Games, everybody can go.
Okay.
As long as 1 per country, everybody can go. But it's existed for ages. I mean, I know people who went to African Games for karate in 2003. Wow. Yeah.
Do you notice a difference between the African Games and the actual Continental Championships? Like, is there like any difference between them?
No, essentially there isn't. It's just that you stay in the compound with athletes, so it's an Olympic style thing. You know, you get
How is that like being in that environment? Like cause obviously, awesome. Yeah, because obviously we're just used to being in a karate bubble almost. We don't really see multi-sport events. What's it like being in that? Like, what's your experiences been of it.
It's super cool, man, because everything is accounted for. You know, these physios that you can access. There's a psychologist that you can access in that type of environment. You can talk to other sports people about their disciplines and their struggles and their point of view and things like that. And I think it's much better, and we should have more tournaments that are run in that way, because I think it's cheaper overall for different federations.
Exactly.
It's more sustainable, and it's a more enjoyable experience for the athletes.
Exactly, because see, for Scotland was meant to be hosting the 2020 European Championships, and the reason we went to host that championships was because it was actually cheaper to host that than a Premier League event, because like all the infrastructure, everything you need to have in place to have that is way more expensive than just hosting a continental championships, which is crazy. So it's one of those things where obviously like, most people will only experience the Olympics as like a multi-sport event. So like being able to bring more sports together and just kind of getting karate's name out there more, because most people going into this Olympics have probably never have watched karate in their life. And I don't know about you, but in Scotland it's never televised. Like, I don't know what it's like in South Africa, so it never gets any recognition.
I think very recently it's been started to be televised, but essentially there's no recognition for it either.
Yeah,
you know, if I tell somebody that I do karate, it's like, okay, cool. Are you what style do you do, or do you have a black belt kind of thing? You know?
Exactly. Like, because I know it's probably like the same for you. Like sports like rugby take precedence over like karate and all that. So
and rugby is my pet irritation, honestly. Because like, I mean, how many people compete in rugby? How many countries? There's Scotland, there's Italy, there's France, there's South Africa, there's Australia, there's New Zealand. You've got like 8, maybe maximum 10 competitive countries.
Exactly.
If you go to a WKF World Championships,
there you go.
There's like 120 countries there that are good competitive countries. Exactly. You know what I'm saying?
And
it's not the same thing to win a Rugby World Cup as it is to be a WKF World Champion. It's completely different.
Yeah, because sometimes we, like, before the point system, we could have had 6, maybe 7 rounds, like, to win like a World Championship. Like, it's a difficult thing to do. Whereas in rugby, as you say, like, you can rotate a team almost, and like, it's almost easier in that respect. Yeah, it's a crazy thing. So, to take us back to your first like winning at the African Championships, what was that like for you? Because obviously you were very young as well when you first done that.
My first senior one, yeah.
Either or. Like, did the experience differ between both of either of them?
Yeah, well, they differed. They differed quite a bit. So, but maybe are similar in some ways. So the first one was in Tunisia, as a junior, and I actually had a pretty tough pool. I went up against Libya in the first round, which probably people from around the world don't know that Libya is decent, but they are.
Yeah.
And then I got Algeria in the second round, which at the time was ranked higher than the Egyptian.
Yeah, I remember Algeria being,
Yeah, he came 5th, I think, in Malaysia, yeah?
Yes, yeah. It was quite a shock, almost. You're like, where did this country come from, almost?
Yeah, exactly. And then I managed to beat the Algerian in the semi-final, which was massive.
Yeah.
And that was very cool. And then I went up against the guy from Botswana in the final, which was weird. I think the Tunisian lost his balance on the other side. So it's just a whole bunch of North African people and then us too.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was super interesting, and it's the first time like I was like, man, I can do something big. And then actually the head coach of South Africa said to me like they can't train me in South Africa. They need somebody from outside, so he introduced me to the Egyptian coach.
Wow.
And I started training in Egypt from 2014.
Amazing. So did you move out there, or was this like that was done remotely?
I was there periodically. So I was there and then I was back, but I made sure to have at least 4 training camps during the year.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What's the setup like in there then for like what's their training regime?
Egypt is very interesting, man. So their kids specifically work super hard. Training usually occurs between like 8 p.m. and 11 p.m.
Wow.
Yeah, so the kids work really hard. All of the and like if you go to national team in Egypt, they train for really long hours. So they close everybody off in a camp like 3 weeks before the competition, and you're not allowed to go home, whatever. And you train for like 6 hours a day.
But again, that's the privilege of being in this situation of being like a fully funded athlete or just having those resources available to you. Like it just shows you, like if we had that almost, where we could almost get to, if you get what I'm saying.
100%.
But
because they give a letter to your school or your job to say, listen, give this guy this time off. You need to sort it out because we're like the highest authority. They come directly from government.
Wow.
And like Egypt is a very militaristic. It's essentially a dictatorship.
Yeah.
So yeah, whatever the government says goes.
And at the same time, that just kind of shows in their results as well. Like it's just how successful they've been. So it just shows you what us as like self-funded athletes need to go up against, and you're still able to have the success you've had, even with you having to put in all the extra work that goes on just outside of karate just to get you to these tournaments alone.
Oh yeah. That's very motivating, and it's very cool.
Yeah.
And like something that I see that's kind of interesting is these teams that hang out a lot together. Their camaraderie is not what I would expect them to be.
Okay.
Like, I don't know if you've ever been to a competition where you see a good South African team. Yes. But a good South African team is like, them when you see them, They're very loud. They fill up the joint, We might not get the best results, but we make a lot of noise.
Yeah. I remember it was the 2011 World Championships again in Malaysia. Like I don't know if it was South Africa specifically, but there was like a load of like African nations with like the drums and like the vuvuzelas and all that, and like it was just such an amazing atmosphere to like surround yourself with. Yeah, it really is. Like you just make the most of it. And I remember the 2016 or 2015 Youth World Cup, and like South Africa was there as well, and like they were just all there having a great time. Like no matter the results, they came off smiling. Just a great environment.
Yeah, it's true, man. So if the team is good, it's a really cool team to be a part of.
Yeah,
it's really nice, and I think that's something that every nation should maybe take a page out of our book for. Exactly. Because like sometimes the energy is too heavy, You've obviously never been to an African championship before.
No, I've not.
But an African championship is something that exists on its own, man. Like it is so loud, and the atmosphere is so crazy. I mean, honestly, if somebody had to offer me a choice between going to a world championship and an African championship, I'm choosing Africa 10 times out of 10.
Amazing. I definitely need to come and just check one out just for that alone then, because
you should, man.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's like a European thing where it's almost like people, like, you think too much of what people care. Like, almost like screaming and shouting. You're probably just in that sense where you kind of just shut off everyone else and you just do what you want to do. And
yeah, we do. Maybe you should come to the one this year, because it's not actually a long flight for you. It's actually in, sorry, my battery went low.
No worries.
So it's in Cairo this year. I'll actually send you the date. So it's not that long of a trip for you. Yeah. I'm definitely going to be there. I don't know if I'm going to be selected, but I'm definitely going to be there. I actually got engaged last week.
Wow! Congratulations!
Thank you so much, to an Egyptian girl. So we decided we're definitely going to go and watch the championship. whether we're selected or not.
Yeah.
She's also a karate girl.
Oh,
Yeah.
great stuff. Oh, that's amazing. That's like good news. Like even like outside of karate, like even with all this going on, it's something to look forward to.
Yeah, exactly, 100%, man. And there's no pressure on me. It's not like this thing of, oh, am I going to be selected? Am I going to be going? It's like, no, man. I already made my decision. Like, I'm the captain of my fate. Whatever you guys want to do, it's your thing, you know?
Yeah. So almost like touching on that, like, have you when you've been able to like live in all those moments where like all the success you've had, you've almost had like you were able to live in that moment and remember it? Because I know for me, like the lockdown's been like a good thing for me, like reflecting back of what I've done over the years. Whereas when we are athletes, where we're going from competition to competition, we don't almost like take it in and like what we've actually achieved and like the success you've actually had there and then. Is that something like you've been able to do throughout your career?
Yeah, not enough.
Not enough. Yeah.
So my first African championship, I think I managed to do it well. My second one, there's actually a video of me like after I win the final, and my facial expression is just blank. It's like, yeah, I did the job. And there was no South African before me that has won back-to-back African championships. Wow. So it was a massive thing, but there was absolutely no reaction.
Yeah.
And then if I think back to 2019, where I competed in every single Premier League, I think I missed some Series A's, but all of the Premier Leagues I did. It's just this constant feeling of like, I'm putting pressure on myself and I need to win and whatever, but I'm seeing the world, but I didn't see it. You know, exactly. I didn't allow myself to see it, and that's pretty terrible.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing to like as athletes. You're so focused on that competition. It's difficult to almost take a step back and be like, I'm in Europe, for example, or South America. Like you don't almost take enough time. Because I know some people that I've spoken to, they've went to Japan, for example, and they've not like got like a single photo whilst they're there because they actually went competition, competed, and went away again. For me, like that all changed like when I went to Chile in 2018, because I was like, it's probably like you every single competition. Like I've taken a 20-hour flight to get here. I don't want to just go to a competition and go home again. Like I don't know the next time I'm going to be in Chile or anything like that. So from then on, I've almost said to myself, no matter the outcome, no matter the result, make sure you go and experience it because not very many people get that chance.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. And I think that speaks to the sustainability of these competitions.
Yeah.
Because something that I'm wondering about is after Olympics is confirmed that it's finished now, right?
Yep.
Okay. So what is going to happen to all of these competitions after the Olympics? Because if I think back to as short ago as 2013, Premier Leagues were super poorly attended.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
None of the top 10 kata competitors were there, for instance. Often you'll have like some no-name brand in the final, relatively no-name brand. Sorry, all athletes deserve respect because they're all putting in the work, but it's not somebody that you would regularly see in the final these days.
Absolutely.
Right? So what is going to happen to these Premier Leagues? So I think maybe like WKF or people who are in charge of karate all over the world need to think about the sustainability of doing these world competitions and generating more power in their organization, and see like the direction that it's probably going is not going to be a good one. I don't think.
Yeah. Do you have any ideas of what you'd want it to look like the setup after like the Olympics and that for like Premier League or like World Championships?
I think the first thing that needs to be cleared up is the mandate of WKF itself. So, for instance, like it speaks about kata being a real performance, you know, but then what's rewarded is not going along with what they're saying, right? And then with kumite, the same thing. Every kumite technique is supposed to be effective. But the thing is, majority of not majority, some of the techniques that are being thrown are not effective in the street, and they're getting points. So they need to re-examine exactly what it is we're trying to do. I think that's the first thing. The second thing is that they need to change the prerequisite for the judging. They need to say, how do we make sure you know what you're doing?
Exactly.
Because that's going to motivate referees. You know, people for me who are like technical heads and stuff, like people like Sakamoto or Kagawa Shihan or whatever, these are the people who need to be teaching the referees what the kata needs to look like.
Yeah, and that gets almost filtered down as well.
Exactly, because then we're thinking about real karate, and the same thing for kumite, and I think that's going to motivate athletes a lot.
Absolutely.
If there's like one global standard that's set by people who are respected globally, and we know who those people are because people pay a lot of money for those people to have seminars in their country and etc. etc.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a difficult thing because obviously each style is going to have their own input. They're going to be like, in terms of if we rank the katas, take that for example, each like Shotokan, Shotoru, Goju is going to have no makata should rank higher than that one and all that, and it's a difficult thing that the WKF over the years hasn't been able to juggle like all the different styles they have. They haven't set out like this one should be done this way, this one should be done that way, because when was it? It was back in like 2015, 2016 where they had no rules about that. Like it was basically what your club done went almost. And now that they've
I think it was 2013.
Right, yeah. Because it was
I remember because Antonio Diaz stepped with the wrong leg in front, yeah?
Yeah, and they got away with it because it's what his club done.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. So
I mean that's a super interesting point. So we need to have some type of global standard. I understand it's exciting to see like new katas that people have not seen before, but the kata list, there's enough there that people can like pull out new things that you haven't seen before, and people do it all the time. Like Bokuji Tozaki is a really good example. Like nobody knew what Kaya no Chinto was before he did it.
Exactly.
And it's been sitting on the list forever for all we know. Yeah. You know, so there are enough katas on the list to keep it exciting, but have a global standard for each one of the kata and educate the referees on what the global standard is. Exactly. I'm a really big fan of the Japanese shite system, the new one.
Yes.
Where they have the first shite round, which is the ones that we did from before, like 2012, and then the second round is like MP, Kurumfa, Nipaipu.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. And then
I really like the system.
They've got like one more round like that, and then it's like free choice almost. I was like, exactly. Back in the day when we had to do compulsory katas, where, well, for me it was Basai Dai and Seiyenshin, like that was like what I had to do in the first two rounds. So it was good in that respect, where it kept like the baseline level the same, and then you could almost like do whatever you wanted afterwards. It was like free choice almost, but you were still had to get through the compulsory rounds of that standard.
Yeah, look, I agree with that, but this is a conversation I was having to one of the referees here locally, right? So if you go to a Premier League, then you'll see like majority, like maybe 80% of the competitors of the guys will do Anandai in the first round.
Yeah,
and then majority of the girls will do Papuran, for instance. And then you'll see like one Chatanyara here and one Super Impe there. But majority of the people are doing the same kata. So why don't you make it a shite round?
Exactly.
But make those katas the shite katas. Because if you're doing Shitoryu, everybody does Super Impe. Everybody does Chatanyara. Everybody does Anan. Everybody does Anandai. So make those for the shite kata for Shitoryu. And then like Shotokan is the same. Everybody does Kankusho, Unsu, Gankaku, Gojishio Sho, Gojishio Dai, whatever. You know, you decide which one of those you want to be your shitekatas. So you don't have to make it boring and say, okay, you have to do cipher this round.
Exactly. Yeah, like as the sports evolved and moved on in that sense, which is good, but it's almost like they need to evolve it and put something else in place, because as you say, like, most of these people are just going to do the same kata over and over again anyway. So why not just add in an extra element like to the sport? Yeah,
exactly. And then you can start discussing. Okay, what's the global standard for Anna?
exactly.
So one of the things that's interesting, maybe a bit controversial, but interesting, in terms of the rules, is that the 4 major styles are Moju, Wado, Shito, and Shoto, right?
Yeah.
So technically, Reiru is not one of the 4 major styles.
Exactly. Yeah.
But our world champion is Ryoki Yuna, who is Reiru, and he's definitely not doing a Shitoryu Anna, for instance, but he's winning with it.
Yeah.
So what's the standard of measurement? I'm not saying Kiyuna's wrong. Kiyuna's an awesome athlete.
Yeah.
But according to the rule book, he's outside the parameters.
Exactly. This is what I don't get, is when you see countries like Japan and Turkey pulling out katas, and you're like, where's that come from? Where was the rules? Or like, where was the videos to explain this is how it should be done? Like in the first place, you just see them, because I remember seeing Ali do Sanse first time, and I'd never seen it before, and it was like, he could have been making that up, for example. Like,
he could have.
For these referees, like, these referees probably didn't know either, so you're kind of almost like taking it on the athletes' like knowledge, or like how high up they are in the sport. They're like, they can kind of get away with more, because if it was me or you, for example, doing it in the first round, you'd probably have the referees come in and have a discussion like, is that actually right? Is this? But because they're like so high up in the sport, they can kind of get away with more.
Yeah, no, it's true. Like in Qatar, the force of momentum is crazy.
Yeah.
You know, and also, by the way, I don't know why Sansai is a registered kata on the WKF list, because I don't know if you know the history of Sansai, but the guy who invented the kata actually, like, he disowned karate. He said karate is rubbish.
Wow.
Yeah, he's a super interesting guy, and he invented Taido.
Okay.
Yeah, so he invented a completely new martial art, but he's the guy who invented it. And by the way, everybody does like shuto, like Shotokan style, right? It's not actually the technique that you use in this kata. According to the guy who invented it, it's like a push technique.
Yeah.
It's like okata. But so why is this now a karate kata? So maybe I can take like a taekwondo form, or I can take a form from somewhere else and put it in. Is it allowed?
Exactly.
It's really borderline.
It's when you see, I've seen so many people over the years, like Spain, for example, is a big one, where they just alter the kata. They miss out moves, they put in extra moves, they change it up, and I'm like, I'm
glad I'm not the only one who's seen it.
How are they getting away with that? How are the referees like, oh yeah, that's fine, where if I was to come up or you were to come up and do that, they'd deduct your points for missing a move or adding in.
You lost because you weren't making a proper fist.
Exactly. I know.
Yeah.
Let's go back and touch on like the success you've had in like the Continentals, for example. Do you remember your finals? Like, do you remember going on performing, and you remember the whole kata, the whole performance?
So 2013, no. 2014, yes.
Yeah.
Because I actually completely tore my hamstring in the second round.
Wow.
Yeah, so I did Anan, and like I did the first Maigiri, and my leg just didn't come back.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. So I did Chatanyara in the final, and I just remember like thinking like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. So I remember every part of the kata. Because every time like I did a Maigiri, I just had to like fall on the leg and accept the weight. I could do no pullbacks. Even the final like Matobi, like I had to leave the leg out and just land in Zenkuts, you know? Wow. So I remember that final really well.
That's right. That's just testament to like every athlete. Like, even if you go through something like on the mat, like carry on, because you never know. You could have the success of winning an African championship, but you don't know. You just like, there's no point doing something at the mat and then kind of walking off almost like, oh, I've injured myself. Like, you kind of just need to push through that? Do you think that's almost down to like your
Yeah,
style?
I remember having a conversation with my coach because I beat Senegal in with Anna, and then my next round was against Egypt in the semi, and it was you know Shoki, right? Ahmed Shoki.
Yes, yes, yes.
So he was like on fire at that point in time because he had just won the University World Championship, and he was ranked like number 12 in the world. So I think it was like maybe close to the peak of his career, right? And my coach was like, "Are you gonna take a safe kata and then keep your best kata for the bronze medal, or are you gonna go for it?" Like, nah, I'm gonna go for it.
Amazing.
Torn hamstring and all, let's go for it.
Wow. What was like your thought process behind that? Because obviously you injured yourself and all that. How were you able to carry on like after doing that? Because so many athletes would be like, I put my hamstring, I can't continue. Like, how were you able to pick yourself up and go into like a match like that?
So for me, like, I don't know, man. Like before the competition happened, I felt like I was going to win.
Amazing.
And at that time there was Ebola in Senegal, so we had to sign a contract with the national federation before we went to say that if we die in Senegal, it's not their fault.
Wow.
So, and I remember signing the contract and saying, if I win the gold medal, it's okay, I can die. And everybody looked at me like, dude, what's wrong with you?
At the same time, I'd be the exact same. It's worth it in the long run.
Exactly, man. Exactly. Well, short run in that case, but yeah. So for me, man, like a torn hamstring was nothing. I just remember asking my coach, I was like, is there a specific way that I should move that's going to like disguise it better? That's all I was concerned about. I just didn't want the referees to know that I was injured and that I looked okay. That's it.
Do you think almost like the adrenaline took over? Because say that was in like training, for example, you'd probably just sit at the side, whereas you're in a competition, it's the African Continental Championships, like you've travelled how far, like you want to win that. Like, do you think that adrenaline just kicked in and you're like, right, let's just get on with it?
Yeah, I think adrenaline had a really big part to play with it, and I just remember my mentality at the time was just like a bullet, and there was no way around it. I'm going straight through.
Wow, that's such an inspirational story because it just shows you like so many athletes, no matter what they can go through, like they can almost pick themselves up and just it's like the mentality of karate, almost like the actual essence of it, where like no matter like what you're going through, like you can always pick yourself up and you always find a way to like get to what like your goal almost, no matter like what you may be feeling in training or like outside the sport.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think this is the key, and especially when I watch kumite or if I watch kata, like I look for fighting spirits, you know, and then I decide whether I like the athlete or not, or whether the athlete resonates with me or not. I think is a better way to say it.
Yeah.
But you can see when somebody's fighting, you know, you can really see it, and that's sometimes like I love Japanese kata, but sometimes when I watch it, it's like, this person's not fighting, you know? This person is just aiming for perfection.
Yes. Yeah. And that was something that was so big and prominent, like, previously. Like, that's like, it's almost in the rule books. Like, there needs to be fight and, like, meaning behind the techniques, but there's certain high-up competitors that I do see. It's like they're just going through the motions. It's like they're there to just put on
I think most.
Yeah. Which it kind of like loses the essence of the sport of what it actually represents as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, battery again. So yeah, man. Absolutely. I agree with that. And for me, like the way that I would hypothetically referee kata is, let's say it's a cage fight, right? Let's say you're in the UFC. It doesn't matter how quick you are or how flashy the movement looks. If you're not able to like properly injure your opponent with a hit, you can hit him as many times as you want. The person's going to walk you down and you're going to be in trouble.
Yep.
So if you're not making genuine impact, and sometimes like oftentimes with the athletes that are known to be powerful, you know, I'm not going to say any names, but athletes that are known to be powerful, they're actually contracting inside themselves, and there's no real impact into your target. And I understand that that's super difficult to measure. That's super difficult to measure, you know, with the eye. And I think that's one of the ways, you know, everything's moving forward with technology. That's one of the things that we should probably measure. You know, like there's these boxing sensors that you put on your wrists, super light. You should be able to put those on your wrists if you're a kata competitor, so that you can measure the force that you're putting out.
Yeah, because like at uni, like I done my dissertation on like the speed of like the Yakuzuki. So like it was like to measure like the starting point, like the initial build up to the actual like full extension, and how that deteriorates round upon round, which is an important thing. And like kumite, like to be able to measure like if that really like at what stages that starts to tailor off, so like people can focus on that round. And it's the exact same as that in kata. Like you need to have ways of how to measure these different things to like help progress the sport as well, because you see so many other sports like taking stuff like this, and it's just evolving their sport again. Because I feel like people think, yes, karate is a very traditional sport, but if you want to like engage like a wider audience, like there needs to be these new things like implemented into the sport. And as you say, like that's just something else like to look into, because it's just a subjective sport at the end of the day, which it's difficult to take.
Yeah, it is, man. And I think also the separation of athletic and technical is almost a fallacy.
Yeah.
You know, because the thing is, like, I mean, Inoue Soke was a really good exponent of this, right?
Yeah.
Your technique needs to be really good in order for you to be really athletic.
Yeah.
You know, if you're not rolling your knee over your toe, doesn't matter which stance you're transitioning in, actually. You know, if you're rolling forward, if you're not using jikuashi, whatever, you know, you're not able to hit hard.
Exactly.
So it's actually the same thing. It's actually the same thing. It's not a good way of separating kata.
Yeah. I think going back onto like in terms of like looking at the fight, I think that's something that Kyuna does so well. Like you can see the intensity in the fight behind his techniques, and I think that's something that you look at the other people around who's like there and thereabouts those medal matches, like they just don't have that. And it's like a crazy thing that they can be so high up, but they've not got that intensity behind them, which is what he's got, which is still a main contributor to a kata.
No, I totally agree with that. And the thing is, yeah, so I like the fact that Kyuna is the top at the moment, because he sets a nice example for the rest of the world, you know. But unfortunately, like, it's not enough to copy the katas that he's doing. So, for instance, everybody does Ohandai now.
Exactly.
Everybody does Anandai. Everybody does Ohan, right? But if you're not hitting hard and you're not fighting, then those are terrible katas for you. Yeah. You know, because they're centered around hitting really hard.
Yeah. Obviously, he picks katas that are in line with his body makeup and his qualities. Is that what you base your kata selection on as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, I think my genetic precursors are basically a little bit similar to what Kyunas are. So I also look for those katas that focus on power and stuff like that. And I know, for instance, like my ankles are really not good, so I try to avoid Nikkashidachi at all costs.
Exactly. I'm the exact same in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so I base my kata selection absolutely on that.
Yeah,
and I think more people should do that, in my opinion.
Exactly, especially when there's very little, in terms of like the katas that we see nowadays, it's a very narrow thing. We see the same one over and over and over again. So if athletes are just trying to do a kata because they think it's going to win, because they've seen other people win with it, instead of actually looking at their self and what their qualities are, and then utilising a kata that way. I think that's something that I've learned especially over the last few years. Like how to be successful. It's right, you need to pick what's you, because in our club, for example, we've got so many different body types. So like one kata that suits me, it's not going to suit like the other person.
Yeah.
So it's all about.
It's a very big mistake from coaching perspective,
Exactly.
in my opinion. So yeah, what I was saying, man, is like, okay, so for instance, somebody like Damien. One second, sorry.
No worries.
Okay. So somebody like Damien, for instance, right? He's a guy who, man, his super impair is really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason why I'm saying it is because his ability to flatten his lower spine, is way more than anybody else. And like I saw an Instagram video of him training like deep core muscles, and like his ability to do that is really good. Okay, he's like, in my opinion, he's not the same as like Abe or Wakai Sensei, not the same. But in terms of the super impairs that we see on the circuit today, it's really good. But if he takes a kata like Ohandai, it's like, this is not your playing field, dude. Like, you're really good at something specific, but this is not like really it.
It was like when he changed from Chatanya Kushanku to just Kushanku. Like, he went from being so successful with that to, it was almost just changing it because everyone else was doing it and they thought he's going to score higher technically. Whereas technically, he's not the best for me. I think what wins him is his physical capabilities. He's so fast, he's so strong. So taking a technical kata where he's not able to utilize what you're saying he's able to do, like, that was like a wrong choice for him, I believe, almost. Which again, it comes back to kata choice. It's so important.
Yeah, it is so important, and because like if you're being compared, especially in a head-to-head situation, like in the middle bout, you might be shown up. So I mean, for him to battle on an athletic basis with Kiyuna, he's gonna have a tough time.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
see, going back to that, obviously Antonio Diaz, I don't want to say obviously he's gotten older, so like his physical capabilities have reduced almost. I still think, I don't know if you've seen it, in the 2018 World Championships where he went up against Damien in the semi-final, they done Super MP against each other. I still think like Diaz was hands down the better, more technical, precise athlete in that sense. Like, he had much better fight as well. Like, I don't know if that's just my personal opinion, but like,
I think it's a lot of people's opinion, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't think what you're saying is, it's a bit controversial, but I think it's quite a popular opinion, actually.
Yeah. Because going back to the 2016 Worlds, I still think that Diaz's Super MP was better than Cuna's, because Super MP for Cuna, it's not the best kata choice for him. It's
not even part of his sequence now.
Yeah, exactly. And so I still think he was unlucky in that sense, where like he lost to those people. Again, that's my opinion. I don't know if it was down to Damien being in Madrid that time and the momentum that he had, like, going into that. But for me, like, I still, if to like pick a Super MP, for example, I still take Diaz's for like the technical ability that he's got, because I still feel like the flow almost in Damien's, it's not quite there for Super MP. Like, it's quite like snappy and like it almost pulls a lot at some of the stuff, whereas Diaz is very fluid and kind of keeps the whole essence of a kata. But again, that's just my opinion, which again, what we're saying as a referee, for example, that's what it all comes down to.
Yeah, exactly, man. No, I totally agree with what you're saying. I really like Diaz is super impe. I really, really like it. And the one specifically that he did in 2012, which, if he performs now, it's not too far from it. Maybe there's a little bit less sharp,
Yeah,
a little bit less fast, but essentially the technical aspects are still there.
absolutely. And
so, so that was it was a tough call. It was a tough call. But even before that, because Damian went up against Diaz in the semi, and he went up against Ali in the quarter.
Yeah,
and Ali was also very, very good in the quarterfinal.
He was definitely. Again, I would have went Ali personally. Like,
Same.
I just feel like technically Ali's a step ahead of like Quintero physically and technically. Again, personal preference, but I really feel for Ali in like the terms of like the Continental Championships, where there's definitely been the ones that I've been to. Ali should have won them. Again, on my opinion, but it's difficult the momentum you have as an athlete, like world rank number one. Like referees kind of edge towards you almost, let you away with more.
Yeah, what I feel from Ali is he's quite an interesting case, because I think he's a really good competitor. He's right up there for me, and that's like all the Japanese included and whatever, is that sometimes I feel like he's got a lot of pressure on him.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I don't know what else he has in his life.
I think that's the thing with athletes in Turkey, especially like they've been like so grown up and homed in on this is your life. Like this is obviously what they do for a living. So like, as you say, like the pressure that he's faced, like I've seen him at tournaments where it does look. I don't know if that's just the way like he looks and he deals with it, but it does look like he's under pressure, and it's like he's almost going into a match resound to knowing he may not win it. Almost up against Quintero or Cunha. Again, it could be completely wrong, but I know what you mean. It's like this is his life, and if he doesn't perform, then who knows the repercussions of it or what else?
Yeah, exactly. And like, I think the referees feel this to a certain extent, and I think he should have been a lot more successful than what he has been, even though he's like super successful.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think he deserves a lot more than what he's given. So somebody who deals with the pressure really well, in my opinion, is Kiuna.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's almost like he doesn't feel it at all. It's ridiculous.
Exactly. Like, I don't know if that's down to he's just got that confidence in himself to be able to deliver the performance to get that win, or he just knows like he is good enough. Like almost like, because like right now I don't think there's anyone really close to him. Like if he wanted, he could go to like Dubai and like almost win it based off like his like previous performances. And that's not going against like any other athlete. That's just like looking at the way he is. Like he could continue for however long he wants, and many people aren't really that close to him.
I think Damian might beat him in the near future.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. He's made some technical hiccups.
Yeah, exactly. There's stuff, and you look at his performance, you're like, why have you changed that when it was working so well almost? Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And I don't feel, I think when he came onto the scene, there was a very rapid rate of improvement. And now I see him sort of flattening out or decreasing. So when that happens, it's a dangerous place.
Exactly.
And, they just need one excuse for Damian to chip ahead. But I think relatively soon, with things being delayed, it gives more time for the political minutiae to do its thing and whatever. I think it will happen soon.
Do you think these athletes will still continue? Like, obviously, they'll possibly continue to Dubai, but obviously Quintero's around about 34, 35. roughly? Like, do you think he'll aim to get that world title, like off Cunha? Or do you think he'll like?
In my opinion, I think Damien will continue for a little bit. I don't know how much longer, but if I was him, I wouldn't think about stopping anytime soon.
Yeah.
Because as much as I'm not like a super fan of Damien's kata, I think he's looking the best now as he's ever looked.
Yeah, he's a lot more complete in terms of like usually you see some of his stances and it's like, is he going to wobble? Is he going to lose his balance? But now it's a lot more grounded. Yeah.
Yeah, and like for somebody like Diaz, for instance, I think he's got a real question on his hands of whether he should stop or not. I know he's thought about stopping previously a lot, and I've had conversations with him about why he left and came back and whatever. And I think, at some point, my belief is that when you're being compared to certain people, you shouldn't participate anymore.
Yeah. Especially when he's reached the heights that he has reached. Like, the last thing you want to do is almost see that decline and not go out in the way that you wanted to, almost. Like, I think Valdez had done that very well. Like, after Paris, he got the bronze, like, in the team as well. He got the medal, and then after that, like, I've done everything in my career, that's it. But I think Diaz he seen the Olympics and he just kind of wanted to go for it, which he's there. So like hats off to him for doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm surprised, man, that that he's in there. Like when he started, I was like, dude, this is a long shot, man. And then he made it.
But at the same time, you look at physically the shape Sanchez is in, and she's 2 years younger than him. So like she's around 38, 39 going on. So like you look at the difference between both of them, and like she just keeps on improving physically, and he's obviously tailoring off. But again, that's just different makeups as well, and how they've done their karate over the years.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's not necessarily a thing of age. You know, like some people you see taper off kind of early. Like as much as Ali had a really good run, I think that Ali is not as good as he was 2 years ago.
Yeah, I'd give you that. Yeah.
And Diaz had like a really good run, but I think like at this point he's not as good as what he was in 2012.
Yeah.
And that's when you need to start considering retirement, I think. Yeah. That's why I said, if I was Damien, I don't think I would consider retirement right now. Sanchez, I don't think I would consider retirement right now because she looks really, really good.
Yeah.
And Shimizu's on the back foot as well. That was something that nobody was expecting.
Yeah.
You know, for Shimizu to lose to Sanchez firstly in Madrid, you know, and then she lost the Japan National Championship.
I was going to say it's kind of like, obviously Shimizu's used to winning for so many years. It's almost like when she's not used to that anymore. It's like it really shows you the type of athlete she is. How is she able to handle that pressure of how are you going to get back to that level almost, or how are you going to bounce back from this competition? And you see it in her performance, and you see it in her facial expressions. Like she's just perplexed almost, and she doesn't obviously know how to do it. Because I watched the Japan Nationals as well, and it was like she was almost speechless, and it was the same like one of like in Madrid as well.
Yeah, I think she's not doing well at all. Mentally and physically, I don't think she's doing well at all. Yeah, so I don't know if she's the same case as Ali, where I don't know if she has something else in her life. Because if she doesn't have something else going on in her life, it's going to be super tragic.
Yeah,
I could have been imagining it, but when I watched the tapes of the Japan National Championships, I think she might be losing her hair a little bit.
Oh wow! Okay.
Which probably is like some hormonal imbalance due to stress. I think.
and this is the thing as athletes, like I've probably touched on this like with other people that, in an outsider's perspective, people only see the results. Like on social media, for example, they only see you winning a medal. They don't know like the roller coaster, what's going on in your life, like the highs that you have as an athlete winning that medal, but also the
Yeah.
lows in the training sessions, which it's almost like we are perceived as like we need to be like superhumans, like we're expected to win every single time. Whereas in normality, we're just like an every normal day person where we go through highs, we go through lows, and we need time to be able to like deal with them and work on them to get back to the best that we can be, which it's almost difficult to do as athletes sometimes.
Yeah, it's super tough. So yeah, a good example of that is me in 2019. So I lost all of the Premier Leagues in first round. And it was like a super depressing time for my karate career. But I had the privilege of going to Japan 3 times to train with Sensei Wakai. And the thing is, she said like she's shocked at the progress that I've made over the times that she's seen me. And she literally saw me in the beginning of the season. 2018 was a very good season for me. So at the beginning of the 2019 season, and she saw me almost right at the end. So her opinion is completely different to what the referees were giving. But the amount of bad talk that was happening about my performance and how good I am at kata and whatever here in South Africa because of the results that they were seeing in Premier Leagues was crazy, And that, you know, it's very like illuminating because you know now that the people who are speaking really don't know what they're talking about.
Exactly.
Because as much as you agree with the dear WKF, you disagree with Sensei Wakai. And guess what? It's not a lot of people who know more than Sensei Wakai.
Exactly. And like proving that over the years, yeah. I know it's it's one of those ones where it's almost difficult, right? Because like you know yourself, like how good you should be performing, and when you don't get those results, and like other people can see how much progress you've made, like it's difficult, like as an athlete, to keep coming back again and again when you know yourself you're improving, but you don't get those results to almost like highlight it to other people to like prove it almost.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And like you said about karate in our countries, nobody's going to speak for us. So what do you do a push up? What do you do, man? Like
exactly. It's such a difficult thing. Obviously we've spoken a lot about like stuff you've had to overcome in sport. Is there stuff like out with your sport that you've had to overcome to like almost help you get to where you are? Like that's affected like your everyday karate?
Yeah, so I would say there's 2 major things. So the first thing was in 2018 I was studying, right? And then I got to the end of the year, I passed all of my stuff, and then they said to me, okay, you can't write exams because you haven't attended enough time in the hospital, right? Wow. Enough clinical hours. But I passed everything until that point. So I'm actually repeating my last year of study this year. So that's obviously, I mean, it offset my degree by 2 years.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is I got like a serious sinus infection. Now, sinus infection doesn't sound that crazy, but it actually went so deep that it closed my eye.
Wow.
And almost went into my brain. If the doctor said to me, if I hadn't gone in like within the next 3 hours of when I went in, I would have died.
Wow.
So that was like a crazy medical complication that I had. And that was simply from like studying and training at the same time and barely getting any sleep and whatever. So, yeah.
I was going to say, how do you like deal with that balance? Because I know obviously we need to fund everything ourselves. So like you need to do so much outside of karate just for you to be able to do karate. Like, how have you been able to balance that? Like, what's like your day-to-day like life almost like as an athlete?
Yeah, so generally I do a little bit of training in the morning, so I need to be getting going by 6 o'clock to start getting ready for work.
Yeah.
So 5 to 6 is generally a training session for me. I do a little bit of mobilization, maybe a little bit of kata technical work.
Yeah.
And then I finish work at around about 3 o'clock. And then I'm also teaching in the afternoon. So typically I teach from around about 5 until 7 or something like that. And then I try to squeeze in when there's gaps.
Yeah.
Training time, so maybe 7 to 8 or a little bit before, something like that. I'll squeeze in some training at that time.
Wow.
So it's pretty tough. And then on top of that, obviously you have assignments and tests and whatever that you have to study for. So there's not much time to breathe, but it is what it is. At the moment, it's Ramadan as well, so I'm getting up way earlier than I usually do.
Wow.
Because I need to eat before sunrise and stuff.
Yeah.
So
wow.
The whole schedule is even worse than it is now.
Which is like almost a testament to like look back at like your career as well, like how much you've achieved, because it's not like the process of you're a full-time athlete, you can train 2-3 times a day, like 6 hours. Once you've done your training, you can kind of like zone out and you don't need to like focus on it, whereas you've got work to focus on, like your degree to focus on, training to focus on. Like, how are you almost able to like cope with all of that? Is that just through like the love of the sport, of doing it?
Yeah, I think training is my happy place. So like this is where I get re-energized. This is where my mental energy gets recuperated and stuff. So it's not the same. I mean, it's not the same as resting. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But like you're able to the switch of the environment and what you're trying to achieve really helps a lot. So yeah, that helps. And then also in terms of focus and things that you need to accomplish, if you have multiple things that you need to accomplish at a certain time, I find it super helpful to meditate, because the things like it like kind of stacks up,
Yeah.
and then you're thinking about 5 things at the same time and you're almost completely not in the moment, and then your functional level just goes down.
Yeah.
So you have to take your time. For me, it's like at least 3 times a day where I have to take 5 minutes where I'm just like, okay, I need to empty everything out of this box over here and I need to restart from fresh.
No, it's a really good thing, because I feel like so many athletes are like in a similar position to you, where they're doing so much like out with the sport to just support it, and they almost don't take enough time to almost relax and take that time to like almost zone out of like their day and just kind of like refocus their mind and just kind of relax, because it's like 100 miles an hour. Like, as you say, like you're working from like 6 o'clock in the morning to like 8-10 o'clock at night. So like you need to find that time for yourself, and it's not being selfish, it's just kind of taking time for yourself to like recuperate and just get yourself back to like almost zero again.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, it's imperative. It's imperative for the function. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to be doing the things that you're doing, and things can crash super easily.
So obviously, like you've got such a hectic like lifestyle and all that. How do you like for like a major championships like an Africans or like a Worlds? What's like your training regime like usually for like the lead up to that?
Yeah. So. Firstly, it's very important to make training programs, to set it out like 6 weeks or 8 weeks before the championship, and then stick to it. Don't try not to deviate as much as possible, because then you lose your way. Majority of my training, by the way, is alone. Like 80% of my training is alone.
Does that impact you, like training alone? Like,
yeah, hugely.
Yeah,
hugely. So you don't have somebody to like push you, like to keep going. You don't know 100% if what you're doing is right or not, or if you need to be filling in a gap that you haven't seen somewhere in your performance. So it's super tough.
On the flip side to that, do you think it's almost helped you like in a competition environment, whereas you've had to been able to push in the dojo on your own, so you're able to push on your own on the tatami almost. Like because obviously we are doing it ourselves. There's no one there to push us every single time. So do you think training alone and having to push in there is meant like you're able to find that extra gear when you go to the tatami as well?
I think there's something to be said for mental toughness. I think when you get a little bit deeper into the rounds, it does make a difference. You know, when you're facing challenge number 2, number 3, whatever, when you have one of those draw sheets that's just like, oh my word, how do I get out of this pool? You know, you can do it, in my opinion, if you're training alone. If you have the support of a coach, then the coach has to be there at the competition. They have to be looking at you between the rounds and whatever. And then it's kind of the same as what you're doing in training, so it doesn't really make a difference.
Yeah.
But for majority of athletes, their coaches can't be there for them when they're competing.
Yeah.
Japanese athletes, a lot of times it happens that nobody's looking at them between rounds. So you have to be able to be functional in your own training. I think that's super key to mental toughness in competition.
Definitely. So obviously, like touching on the whole training yourself, what else do you usually do in like the lead up to like a competition, like a major?
Yeah, so I split it up generally, and I try to do like 30 hours a week, around about. That's what my preparation looks like. Sort of 8 weeks before competition happens.
So you're
I split my stuff up.
You're basically doing 2 full-time jobs, like, and
that's essentially what it is.
Which, like, it's difficult for people to comprehend if they're not doing sport. Like how difficult that is, working 30 hours on just your sport that you don't actually get anything out of it apart from the benefits that are going to benefit you, like mentally or a medal or a result. There's no financial gain that you're going to get out of it. Whereas they put in the effort at work or something like that just to get you there.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's crazy, man. It's crazy. So yeah, it's very difficult for people to understand what is required. It's almost like competing with people who are on steroids. Probably worse.
Yeah.
Probably worse, because it's not fair that you have 24 hours in a day to train and prepare yourself, and I have 6. It's not fair.
Exactly. Does that almost make a win sweeter for you? Like knowing that you've sacrificed so much, and then when you get to that medal, it's like makes it all worth it, or worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely. So the 2 things that makes it better for me is, number 1, the fact that I know I don't have the same type of opportunities as people from different countries. Yeah. And the second thing is that I know that all of the championships that I've won have been because my kata is good. Yeah. Because there's no political reinforcement for me at all, on national level or on international level. People are purely looking at me and they're saying, this is what I rate you. And sometimes, I'm going to lose horribly because I don't have any political support. Yeah. But that's okay, because all of my results are real.
Exactly. No, it's a great thing, really is, because it's difficult sometimes to, like, most people like Turkey and Spain, they've got so much around them and all that. It kind of gives them like an edge almost. But when like someone like yourself or like anyone from like Scotland, for example, wins, it's purely down to them putting in an unbelievable performance, and that's the only reason why they've got that result.
Yeah, it's true, man. Like sometimes I wonder if I was an athlete from Turkey or Italy or whatever, I don't know what I would think, because surely sometimes this wasn't me, and it happens to all of those countries, those athletes from top countries. It happens to all of them. Yeah. So it's an interesting thing to keep going. Also, this is also an interesting question. So the thing is, if by your and my assessment, the wrong people are ranked in the medal bouts or whatever in a world championship or a Premier League or whatever, then what's the point in us aiming for those positions? because we already said that the assessment is incorrect.
Yeah.
So now it's difficult again to be motivated to say like, but your system is not one of meritocracy, so what am I aiming for really?
Yeah. It's an interesting point because the points, for example, like Quintel's had a few slips or a few falls, or he's done X, Y, and Z, but he still scored unbelievably high. Which it's not a true representation, because those points should be taken off, and it almost looks like they've not. Do you think, this is probably something I should ask, well, what system do you prefer? Do you prefer the points or the flags?
Flags, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no doubt.
More. I almost think for like a spectacle, like an audience thing as well, like it's very anticlimactic, a score appearing on the board. And like for someone just watching the sport, whereas if they see flags, it's almost like if it's a split decision or something like that, like you hear shrieks or like they get more involved, and I just think it is better. But I understand the reasons why they changed it for like the Olympics, but I think
it also doesn't make sense, because it's supposed to give a more objective reasoning for why athletes are winning or losing, but it's actually, if anything, it's become more unclear.
Yeah,
I think
I know definitely in the beginning, like I've spoken to referees and like I don't know why I gave that score. It was like they gave it because they thought it's what it should be instead of what it maybe actually was.
Yeah.
But
so the conversation that was happening in South Africa was, if you see that you're constantly outside the trend on the top end or the low end, try to get into the middle. And the thing is, it's like, okay, hold on a second. If I'm constantly scoring high and I need to try and get in the middle, how do I assess the kata accurately? Because I think it's this. I think it's a 5.4. But I'm always scoring too low, so I'm going to give you a 6.4. But now 6.4 means nothing, because that's not what I gave you in the first place.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, I really think the point system is a disaster, and I really hope that they change it back after Olympics.
Exactly. I hope they do. I know there's talks of them definitely like rejuggling it, almost like making it more streamlined. But yeah, as an athlete for myself, like I prefer the flags all day long. Like the point system,
they either need to go back to the flag system or they need to improve on the flag system.
Yes. Yeah.
With things like, okay, let's measure the guy's actual power, because there's devices that you can do it.
It's quite simple.
And then you have an objective, and then like it puts in the score automatically. There's no referee that has to say anything about it. So there, boom, there's your athletic ability. That's how hard you're hitting.
Yeah.
Okay. We can measure your speed as well. Okay. So athletic, the referee doesn't touch. We only discuss technical because that's according to human perception.
Yeah.
So I still have a chance of swinging the score with something objective. We need something objective in kata.
Yeah.
And actually, we can do the same thing in kumite, where, you know, in taekwondo, if you get touched, then a light goes off.
Yeah.
I understand we don't want to be looking like taekwondo, because the techniques are not real in taekwondo. They can't really knock a person out, at least with the one that's in the Olympics. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But you can say the light goes off, and then the referee has to negate or confirm whether it was a point.
Yeah. And it's this thing as well. I think in taekwondo, the referees don't see what other referees are doing, so they're not influenced by their own by their decision. Which in committee, like, it's a lot of, if I put out my flag, someone else is going to put out their flag, almost like whereas that aspect should almost be taken away, because because someone else is putting out their flag for the sake of it, they should get the point. Whereas they may not have seen an angle or seen something, but they're still able to put out the flag. It doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, and also the point of coming from a specific country, you know, you get so much more support from the referees. I actually think they should ban badges. And they shouldn't let you know. They should just say your what do you call it, the WKF number. without the country code in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then maybe you have to wear a mask or something, like a full face mask
So I was going to
when
say,
you compete, so nobody knows who you are.
yeah, because obviously people are still going to be like, oh yeah, that's Kuna. Yeah, we'll just give him. He doesn't have a Japan badge on, but yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What's like your, obviously you've had so much success in the sport, like you've done so well over the years. What's like, do you still have goals or like targets you want to reach?
Well, I'd really like to go to the Olympics. The last little bit of the preparation hasn't looked that great. But let's hope something happens in the Paris qualifier. Are you going to be there at the Paris qualifier?
I will be there. Yep. But as I was about to say was, you're taking away the top 5 athletes who are always medaling in these contests. So it is completely open. If you have one good day where all your catas go well, there's no reason why anyone can't go. Which
absolutely,
which is the belief you need to go in with. There's no point going to the qualifiers being like, oh, I might get through 1 round, I might get through 2 rounds. Like, you need to go there having that confidence of being like, I can do this, because and at the end of the day, like, the most confident athletes are the ones that usually have the most success anyway.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true, man. So yeah, I wanna compete there. Maybe I'll compete in the UFAC championship if I get selected. I'd like to win that one. Yeah, so I'd be very excited for that. And I think that's it for me, man. I think after UFAC, I'm gonna retire.
So wow.
I think that's me.
At the same time, like this, as I say, like the stuff you've achieved within the sport, like you could leave the sport the next day, tomorrow, or whatnot, and look back on such an amazing career. But is that something? Is that like something within the sport? Like, if you were to leave tomorrow, you wouldn't have any regrets. Like you've done.
Yeah, I absolutely don't have any regrets. I really enjoyed my time in sport. As a competitor, I'd like to go into coaching now.
Great.
Because I think I have a lot to offer there.
Definitely.
But yeah, I mean, it's so weird, man, that you're saying that like I've achieved a lot, because it's like something that I never hear. You know, I just think like, oh, I did okay, but actually in South Africa, you know, like I'm not a somebody. You know,
this is the thing. Like, I want to get across with like what I'm trying to do with like these like this show. It's because like athletes almost don't get the recognition. Like, the people I've spoken to, like they've like European medals, like XYZ, like they've achieved so much, but because in like a certain nation, they may not almost get the respect that they deserve or the recognition, because it's not a sport that like it's people don't think it's like up there almost, so like they don't really see the results. But at the same time, it's one of those things where it's not until you take a step back and like you reflect on your career that you've actually achieved so much as well, which as an athlete competing, it's so difficult to do like during that process.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, it is. It's super tough, but yeah, if it wasn't super tough, then it wouldn't be enjoyable.
Exactly. I think to wrap it up, we'll finish with some quick fire questions.
Okay.
We'll put you on the spot, see how you'll do. We'll start off with an easy one. What's your favourite kata?
Supreme.
Good. What's your most memorable tournament?
Senegal 2014 UFAC.
Good, nice. What's been your like favourite country to travel to?
Canada.
Oh, Canada. Was that for Montreal?
Yeah, Montreal. I really enjoyed that.
Amazing. What about, who did you idolise within the sport? Like growing up, or like who were you like looking at?
Wakai Sensei.
Good.
Yeah, it's crazy that I got to train with her. But like I had an iPod Touch, man. Everybody had an iPod Touch.
Yep.
When I was like 12 years old, and I had a picture of Wakai Sensei, and then I eventually got to train with her.
So that was like almost a dream come true, being able to train with her as well. Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow. Who's like the biggest opponent that you've ever come up against?
The biggest opponent that I've ever come up against.
Yeah, right. One that you look back on, like, I can't believe I've went up against them, or
Yeah, Moto Kazumasa.
What tournament was that in?
Berlin K1. We went up against each other in the third round.
Yeah, wow, yeah. What about your favorite kumite technique? Do you have one of them?
Yeah, man. I think Kisamizuki is probably my favorite kumite technique.
Nice.
A lot of variation you can hit somebody with. It's cool.
Do you do more? Do you still train like fighting? Like at times?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Twice a week, man. I'm always doing kumite.
Do you think that almost helps, like, impacting on someone, like doing a yakuzuki, for example? Like, you can almost take that into a kata as well.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that sense of urgency. You know,
fight as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, perfect. And one final thing, what's like an inspirational or a piece of advice you wish you could have told your younger self, like growing up, or that you could tell like the next generation of athletes coming up, as do this, have like it will almost help your journey?
That's an interesting one, man. I think the most important thing for me in my career was learn how to be independent.
Right. Yeah.
In your thought, in your training, everything. Learn how to do everything on your own and how to make your own decisions.
Yeah.
Because there's always going to be somebody trying to tell you what to do.
And that will just build that mental toughness, that resilience, where if a competition may not go your way, as long as you know how to deal with that, you can move on to the next training session, the next competition. Yeah.
Absolutely, man.
Great stuff. Well, that has been Real Talk with Jordan Szafranek, with our guest today, Michael du Plessis. So thank you so much for taking the time. It's really amazing to see the different insights into, like, it's just your like own style of training, like in South Africa as well, because I feel like we almost see like certain nations and we see how they do it, but we don't see it in like your country, for example, which is really different and is really eye opening as well, and the stories that you've got. So
absolutely, man. It was really cool to come and have a chat with you, and I hope to see you in Cape Town sometime soon for a training session.
Definitely. But we'll definitely catch up in Paris as well for the Olympic qualifiers if that's the first time. Yeah, I'll see you.
Perfect. Ciao, ciao.
Right.